Well, a special thank you to Jim Ellinger for talking with us today. He's with Austin Airwaves. He's a longtime person in service of community radio. So it's a treat to have him. We're going to talk about emergency situations and also FCC licenses in regards to emergency situations. Ben Kobb is going to join us soon too, and he's part of the FEMA team, so he's a great person to have on this call. And I believe Jim and Ben have some projects that they'd also want to talk about that are new, besides the basic stuff we're going to talk about today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jim. Thank you.
Sure. Glad to be back, Stephanie. Hello, friends. We're always glad to take part in some sort of community radio work. Austin Airwaves considers itself a longtime member of the Pacifica family. KPFT is our home station. We have many, many, many mutual friends and have taken on many projects over the years. Our story begins as the Hurricane Katrina comes closing in on the American Gulf Coast. Nothing like this had ever happened on this scale. 3 million telephone lines went down, 50 to 100 radio stations were destroyed, millions upon millions of people were displaced, a couple of thousand lost their lives, $100 billion in damage, over 900 square miles of the Gulf Coast, unprecedented in its impact on the American infrastructure and people. We here in Austin, Texas are fortunate enough just to be far enough away from the coast that we were very mildly affected. Austin Airwaves, which we note is not a radio station, it's an independent media group, sort of media activists and engineers. We take on projects and bring people and resources in as needed. We've been averaging about one new radio station every couple of years. We often put radio stations back on the air after they've had some sort of a local calamity. We were in Haiti after the earthquake. We were in New Orleans after Katrina. We were in Wimberley, Texas, after the terrible, terrible flood. And we come in, do the work that needs to be done, and we're real proud. We leave. We provide the tools and the resources needed for the local community to allow themselves to speak for themselves and to themselves, train the local people, and then we say goodbye. This is especially true in Africa and the developing world. So as the Katrina disaster unfolded, the United States was not prepared. FEMA was not prepared. The governors of various states were not prepared. Nobody was prepared. And very quickly, Austin Airways started getting calls from among activist groups down in the lower Ninth Ward. And they wanted radio transmitters. And we had friends of friends who had FM radio transmitters. And we saw that those went down there. And they began broadcasting emergency information out of a tent. No music, no entertainment, strictly emergency information. That is to say, the Circle grocery store, a well-known place, is where you go to get your Red Cross card. But you have to have ID. And you shouldn't go into this area. The police are pretty much arresting any young person. And just basic stuff like that. And they operated providing emergency information, including road maps. All the street signs were gone. They were telling people how to get around the city. And lo and behold, the Federal Communications Commission, whose office somehow managed to survive Katrina, came in and busted them. And they were very rude. And one guy kind of got roughed up a little bit. They took the transmitter, they took all the equipment, and that was it. And a few days later, they call us again and kind of hat in hand and asked if they could have another transmitter. And being the resourceful group that our friends of friends are, we gave them a second transmitter. And they continue operating like that for, well, not very long, just a week or so. And they came down on again, and they went off the air. That was the Common Ground group. What we're responding to is that the United States, unlike many of the developing countries around the world, has no form of emergency temporary radio. In Canada, you can get what's called a festival radio. If you expect 50,000 people out in the country and you want to talk about parking lot and where the medical station is and things like that, you can get a temporary low power radio license. Same in the UK, same in Japan. Most of these are typically LPFMs with very short lives, 1 month or less. And there's plenty of regulation to go with that. Nothing like that had ever happened has been available in the United States. As the disaster unfolds and grows, about 25,000 evacuees found themselves living in the Houston Astrodome, one of the largest cities, buildings in the world. And along with the wonderful folks at KPFT, Democracy Now!, Chickpea and Renee and Tish Stringer and other radio activists and Austin Airwaves petitioned that we put an emergency radio station on the air inside the Astrodome, inside the building we would broadcast. And we were met with open hostility. I think I came pretty close to being arrested in retrospect. No, you don't have permission to go and interview these poor people. No, we're worried you're going to play hip hop and gangster music. They actually said that, and will incite the people to riot. And they were just really hostile to us. So we went in a couple times to the JIC, the Joint Information Center, where all the agencies were kind of trying to coordinate amongst themselves. Now things are much well organized. And we made a point of bringing a couple of prominent attorneys. We brought the attorney for the Texas Democratic Party with us and a local attorney well known to all these people. So they had to take us a little more seriously. But things were not very well organized. And there was a lot of trouble and a lot of arrests. And somewhere along the line, we never learned. Somewhere between the city of Houston and perhaps the White House, via our friends at the FCC, said it's okay to put a temporary radio station on the air inside the Astrodome. We won't call that broadcasting. And again, there was no precedent for that. And what ultimately happened was we broadcast outside of the Astrodome in the media parking lot. There were maybe 100 media vans there. It was an enormous event, as you can imagine. And one of them was just a little Airstream trailer, just a little half-size Airstream trailer with two 20-foot sections of Roan Tower and the antenna and a little broadcast studio on the inside. And it worked. One of the things they complain is none of these poor people that you're trying to bother have radios. So Amy Goodman, the Sony Corporation, KPFT, we bought 10,000 radios. It stands as the largest purchase of any just 99-cent store in the country. Walked in, talked to the nice young man, said, how many radios you got? How many you want? How many you got? I said, I'll take all the radios you have in the city. And it was about 10,000. And we just gave them out. They were just little cheapo radios. They already had their antenna. And that pulled out that argument about not doing the station. So I guess they capitulate. They had other issues more important. And they began broadcasting emergency information. The Red Cross, what to do if you have warrants, what do you do if you don't have your ID on you. And really kind of rudimentary stuff. No music, no entertainment. And then people started finding their way to the station and telling their story, which got very heavy very quickly. Parents who've lost their children, young people who've lost their parents, and some pretty awful stories, which they just shared over the air. You can say anything you want except the 7 dirty words. And that went on for days, and it got picked up by the national and even the international media. It was on the front page of the Los Angeles Times National Edition a couple of days running. It was on NPR. It was on just scores and scores of newspapers across Texas and across the nation. And I even did 6 minutes live on the ABC in Australia. Remarkable. Talking about the unhealed wounds of the Louisiana Gulf Coast and how aid is not coming in and the situation is quite dire. And it just generated an enormous amount of publicity. And that's a great story to lead off. They never changed the rule. To this day, decades later, you cannot get an emergency radio license in the United States. If you chose to go on the air, such as the Burning Man community does, where they have this enormous event out in the northern Nevada desert, extremely isolated, one of the white space areas, that is, there's no radio out there at all. There's like a dozen radio stations in trailers, and it's a real party scene out there. Some of them are quite prominent. Some of them are well known and are on the air or on the internet year round, and they provide information. It became particularly valuable at the Burning Man event when they had, for almost the first time, almost without precedent, rain. This is desert, and it was in a dried lake bed of silica, not dirt, not sand, silica. As soon as the silica got wet, it turned to concrete. And if you were in it, you were stuck. We all saw the publicity, some of it quite hysterical. And they broadcast great information. Just stay where you are. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of everything else. give us 48 hours and you can go home. And they were just invaluable, but they were illegal. They were illegal. They were not licensed. And generally speaking, Austin Airwaves encourages stations to follow the law. That's what it's for. Maybe not the best. And if you are doing something extra legal, maybe we don't want to know about it. So even now with the 2023 LP-FM window, previous one was in 2013, now 2023, licenses are going on the air left and right. It's pretty nice. There's no opportunity for people to broadcast emergency information. We even kind of forced this issue. Again, Austin Airwaves is not a radio station. We're an advocacy group. We answer to nobody but our board members. And we don't take no guff off nobody, as they say. We petitioned the FCC for 6 radio licenses, LP-FM, 6 of them. Now, you can only apply for one board of directors, locally owned for 3 years with a nonprofit board. They're pretty strict about this. And that's fine because they don't want these things to daisy chain into networks. We have our religious friends who want to get as many, their hands on as many as possible. The only exception to that is that if you're a public safety entity, you had to be recognized by your local authorities, had to be in writing, you had to have an established relationship, and you would say, we will work with the local first responders, the local emergency operations center, in the event that they declare an emergency in their town. And we were pretty ambitious in that, but we weren't able to pull that off. We had not done enough homework in a half a dozen little Texas towns, but we had in one. We were very fortunate indeed that Kyle, Texas, which was anxious to get a radio station, they have none. We had considerable resources and experience. Our dear friend Laura Lee Harris had been involved in putting a station on the air in Wimberley. She brings considerable resources to bear. And we made what became known as drop 5 to save 1. We dropped the application of 5 radio stations. I hate to even say the town's names in order to get one. And that was the right move. I talked to a couple of 3 lawyers and a couple of 3 engineers. And the decision to just put one on the air in Kyle was the right decision. And we'll probably be on the air, early next year. So let's see. Moving forward into modern times. 2 years ago, the Texas Tribune, that is an online newspaper, very, very well funded. Every major corporation in Texas seems to be an underwriter. Very good paper. We really like them. Once a year, they have a thing called Trib Fest, and they invite all the big names in media and all the writers and all the editors and all the personalities come. And you can ask them questions, and they have great parties, and it's just a wonderful event. I'm very lucky. They give me press credentials. We love them. So a couple of years back, FCC Commissioner Janet Rosenwasser, a very nice lady, stylishly attired in striped socks and ripped blue jeans, very stylish lady. She spoke. She was interviewed by the media editor of the New York Times. I was front row. This is me. It was fascinating stuff. And they were talking about media deserts, little towns, even whole areas of states. There's no media at all. There's none. There's no local radio. There's no local newspaper, certainly no local TV. You might hear something about the town when they have a festival from the big city 50 miles away. And they're concerned about that. Commissioner Rosenwasser is actually a pretty good commissioner. So I just, are there any questions? Well, I just fairly leaped up and I said, hello, Commissioner, welcome to Austin. Make sure you get some barbecue. And I said, I'm with Austin Airwaves. We're one of the groups that helped put the radio station on the air in the Astrodome. He was speaking very clearly, and she nodded. She knew what that was. That is a part of FCC lore, that the only time they'd ever sort of let that happen was during the height of the disaster in Katrina. And I said to her, as you know, Commissioner, the FCC never did that again. They never issued another emergency license. And she nodded and said, that's correct. We've never done that again. Dramatic pause. I call your attention to the situation in Vieques, Puerto Rico, where the manager of the station there died, and the station is now dark. And the LP-FM license seems is going to be grabbed by the United States Virgin Islands. And yet they still have time on their license. And speaking of media deserts, I can't think of a situation where they too, of course, were hit by a hurricane, that they could be allowed to be on the air. Many of the pieces are in place. We hope you will consider that. I'm trying to be real polite. And she said, I would be very pleased to hear about that if you can put that on my desk, which we did probably within the hour. Michael Brown, well-connected engineer, got that to her desk computer just hours later. And lo and behold, they allowed the license in Puerto Rico. And the people were on the air. It was less than a year, and I believe the United States Virgin Islands did snatch it away. But that was a wonderful thing to happen. It kind of shows you when you have some access to power, even though it's just sort of by luck, by chance, it reinforces this image we have of Austin Airways is able to do stuff that nobody else can. And we don't really milk it, but we've had some remarkable opportunities to put stations on the air on just awful conditions that seemingly no one else could do. The last example I would give, our friend Laura Lee Harris could certainly tell you, in Wimberley, Texas, a very pretty little town, getting kind of touristy, fun place to go, live music. They had a terrible flood, really bad, 14 dead. Without warning. It was a terrible disaster. And the local community there had already been working on getting a LPFM, and they were working with the local EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. And the Raybuck family, Susan McAfee Raybuck, and the Ellinger family had been friends for 50 years, old labor, old Democrats. And we worked together, and they got them the license to put this station on the air. And they had the construction permit in hand, and we're about to do the fundraising to build the station when this flood came through. Long story short, they're now on the air, very successful station. And so, let's see, we're good on time. I want to leave, if Sharon shows up, give her 5 minutes to plug the GRC. And if and when Bennett shows up, I want to give him like 10 minutes to talk about what he is now on top of. Bennett Kobb.
And you are lucky because they are both here.
Yeah, good. Welcome. Sharon Scott needs no introductions. She is one of the superstars of LPFM. Her and her son Max just can do no wrong. Bennett Kobb is my new favorite resource person, maybe in all of America. Bennett, you are a remarkable dude. Why don't we let you jump in now? Tell folks what your background is with FEMA/CPB and the next generation warning system, and then guide people to where the tutorial is going to be. This is big news. This is going to be a big pot of money for emergency equipment for small stations. Now, Bennett will tell you there's going to be huge competition, and the rules you have to follow are extreme. And in fact, our little station may not even qualify. But Bennett, we'd like to hear from you, my friend.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Bennett.
My tribe. I got my WXOX fabulous mug right here. Thank you, Sharon Scott.
I made it all the way to Texas. That's awesome.
It did, actually. It just showed up.
Oh, great.
And I want to emphasize that I am no longer contracting with FEMA. I'm a recent escapee from Washington, D.C. I'm here in Texas now. And so nothing I say is any kind of official anything. It also doesn't substitute for the official materials and webinars and forms and all that FEMA, that CPB provides. So the Federal Emergency Management Agency has received a great deal of money from Congress, which is then funneled through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, for the purpose of grants to radio and TV stations, non-commercial radio and TV stations, for enhancing their emergency preparedness. Mostly, this is for purchases of hardware and professional services, such as might be engineering services, construction services, necessary to put that hardware into operation. FEMA or CPB recently had a webinar on this a few days ago. They're going to have another one on August 20. And I believe they will be posting the recording of the webinar that just took place on their site. And I will put the links here in the chat, but there are previous webinars for previous rounds of these grants, but this is a new round. And if you've seen what I posted on Facebook or know what I've been up to, I've been encouraging community stations to apply for these grants. But I have to tell you that this latest webinar has sobered me up a little bit, because the CPB staff emphasized that there is not enough money for all of the requests that they get. So it will be extremely competitive. And they are sticking very closely, very narrowly to the principle that this money is to enhance your resilience and emergency preparedness, specifically your ability to send emergency alerts to the public. And so while there are many different aspects to emergency preparedness of your station, at the end of the day, when they have to make hard decisions about who gets the grant, who doesn't, it really has to focus on emergency alerts. If you have had a disaster in your community of whatever type where your station has played a role in informing the public, you've got to document that. Now that's me talking, that's not CPB, but based on what I've heard and my familiarity with this field, they are not going to accept vague generalizations or letters of support from the police chief or something that doesn't really detail what your emergency plans are and what your possible purchases of equipment under this grant, how that is exactly going to enhance your ability to stay on the air and communicate emergency messages. So some of this is about hardware. You'll need your engineering people, you'll need your grant writing people, but planning is critical. Do you have emergency operation plans at your station? Have you met with your local emergency managers? Do they know you exist? Do you have arrangements in place for them to contact you if they want you to communicate some emergency message to the community? What if the phones aren't working? What if the internet isn't working? What if somebody who is supposed to be there is on vacation or is not reachable? Maybe you have an emergency plan, but how recent is it? I have interacted with hundreds of public safety agencies that are not particularly good at succession planning. They had an emergency manager, that person retired or whatever, and there's a new person, and that new person doesn't know about your radio station, doesn't know about community resources, never heard of this. They may not even know about IPAWS and EAS. And let me bring that up. So when you read the materials of the CPB to prepare for this or to look into it, you'll see a lot about IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. This is the system jointly administered by FEMA and the FCC. And the Emergency Alert System, EAS, is part of IPAWS. The other main part is wireless alerts on phones, but this grant program does not concern that. So for radio purposes, it's the EAS. Your station already has to have EAS device in place. It's got to be turned on. It's got to be connected to IPAWS over the internet. It's got to be receiving the tests and alerts through radio as well, through the 2 stations that your state plan requires you to monitor at all times. You've got to have the necessary software. All of this is part of the obligation you already have. If this is not a part of your station, you have to get that together. And maybe you will want a new EAS box, or maybe you will want a generator to help your station stay on the air, or some equipment of that nature. All of this should be reimbursable under these grants. Although I hurried to point out that the way this works is you can't buy something now and hope to be compensated for it later. Purchases made before the grant don't count. And if you're going to be replacing equipment They're very strict on this. You will even need to send a photo of the equipment you're replacing. I cannot overstate how precise and focused this grant program is. They will not accept arm waving and generalities. If you want to buy something, you have to explain, you have to state the price and explain how you found out that that was the price. So you have to document what the supplier has stated as the price, pro forma invoices, or however you want to do that. One of the questions that has come up is whether LPFM stations are eligible and whether unbuilt stations are eligible. These came up during the last webinar. And rather than say yes or no, the CPB staff pointed specifically to the legislation that identifies what a type of station is. And I'm going to quote that. I think I have it here.
You're doing great.
So the eligible entity is called a public broadcasting entity. And the law says that this is any licensee or permittee of a public broadcast station or any nonprofit institution engaged primarily in the production, acquisition, distribution, or dissemination of educational and cultural television or radio program. So that is the $10 Washington, D.C. definition, and it specifically says permittee. So if you have a construction permit but do not have your station built yet, it certainly looks like you are eligible. And some stations have expressed, well, we have not been part of the CPB before. We have not received what they're called the CSGs, the community service grants. This is a different grant program, and previous interaction with the CPB is not required. Let me make a couple more points here that I've saved up and then try to take some questions. Again, I want to emphasize that I am not an official source of this. I just want to encourage you to look into it if you can. And hopefully at the GRC, while the GRC will occur after the deadline, the September 12 deadline for the grants, we hope to have a session on EAS generally. FEMA has always emphasized that local stations sit down with the emergency managers in their area, exchange business cards, exchange phone numbers, know how to contact each other, learn how they think, learn about their EAS capabilities. Are they an IPAWS alerting authority? Would they use EAS in an emergency? Or maybe they might not use it, but they want to be able to contact you. I can give you an example that I was involved in. 2016, the Washington, D.C. area, the whole mid-Atlantic area had an incredible series of snowstorms. They caused hundreds and hundreds of accidents. This was called the Snowzilla. I got caught in it, and it was one of the most frightening nights of my life. And it was very sudden and very dangerous. The Arlington County government did not use EAS, but they did contact our LPFM station there, WERA LP, and an emergency message was recorded to get people to stay off the roads, and that was broadcast. It was a little bit late. I was already on the road, but we think that it may have certainly saved some lives in that situation. The fact is, even those emergency management agencies that have access to EAS, because they are official IPAWS alerting authorities, may not use EAS. There are many emergency managers who are prepared to send public alerts who've never used EAS, and they may never want to use it. This is a strange fact of life, even though all radio and TV stations are required to have the EAS equipment, and it has to be working. If you're ever inspected by the FCC and they find that your EAS is not happening, then there is a penalty for that. The top mission of EAS is to enable the president and the administrator of FEMA or persons that they designate to speak to the entire nation by radio and TV within 10 minutes of their request wherever they are in the world. This has never been used in an emergency, and we certainly hope in our lifetimes it will never be used in some kind of a crisis. It's only be used for tests. So this is the top role, the top mission of EAS, and it's why every station is required to have this gear. But obviously that type of situation is not happening most of the time. So local and state emergency authorities have access to EAS if they want to use it. They may become more familiar, they may be more familiar with sending alerts to cell phones because those can be very precisely targeted to specific local areas. EAS is a broadcast range that you would find from a typical radio or TV station, and it may even be something like a county geographic area. And unless they need to alert a wider area, they may be reluctant to use EAS. That's why I recommend that stations not sit around and wait for EAS alerts from their local authority. Exchange phone numbers, have a plan for how to cooperate in the event of emergency, EAS or no EAS. If you have an emergency plan, how old is it? What happens if you try to call that emergency manager and you find they're long gone and the new person doesn't know who you are, they may not know about your station, et cetera. Don't wait for a crisis to forge those relationships. Also, there's some basic things at your own station. First of all, are you monitoring your air? I was recently counseling a station that had no way of knowing if their radio station was on the air or not, because they didn't listen to it and they didn't have a radio. If you are running a radio station and you do not have radio receivers, that's kind of ridiculous. If you have a digital studio, then you are more likely monitoring the digital input to the transmitter, and the reason for that is because of the gap in time between speech that is spoken into your digital board and the time it goes out over the air, and that can mess up the person who is speaking. But even if that is the case, you still need to have a receiver. You still need to be sure you're on the air. There are many times when our local LPFM was off the air, many times, and they had no idea. They simply had to wait for someone to say, what happened to your radio station? Because I was listening, to it and the signal dropped. So you've got to be able to monitor your air. If a situation happens where your personnel have to leave the station, it's entirely possible in a disaster. Do you have a portable receiver so that you can listen to your station? I know you've got a radio in the car. What if you're not in the car? These basic kinds of things. What if something happens late at night and you have a DJ spinning tunes and maybe there's a fire, there's a command to stay out of a certain area. Heaven forbid there's a shooter. Do they know about it? Do they have a plan on who to contact?
Right.
Is there, for example, a TV in your studio? Probably, the sound turned down, but if they need to watch TV to see something, is that available? Do you have a NOAA weather radio receiver? If the internet is down, you may still, if electricity is still functioning, you may still be able to receive warnings and get the news that way. So does your station know what is happening locally? And that's a step everybody can take regardless of any grants. Now I'm going to post in the chat the link to the CPB page, and there's also a webinar page there. And just one final remark before, if we have any questions, I know I'm going on a long time here.
That's okay.
Name of this program is Next Generation Warning System Grant Program, NGWS. Well, there is no next generation warning system for radio. This was brought up during the webinar, and they sort of hemmed and hawed through it. For whatever reason, this phrase, next generation warning system, was applied to it. For TV, the grants will help public TV stations convert to ATSC3, which is the new digital TV standard. But even that by itself is not a next generation warning system. So don't worry about this name. It's just the name that was applied to it. And if you are interested in the grants, possibly competing for the money, then you need to read the documentation and the forms that are on this website. I'm going to post that in the chat and then come back here for any questions.
Ben, thank you so much. You're my new favorite resource person in Central Texas. Before we get to questions to you, why don't we let Sharon put a big fat plug in for the GRC, and then we'll get to questions. Is that okay?
You bet.
Sharon, you're up.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for letting me know I was on the schedule today in the email that you sent out to the whole GRC listener. Hey. Had to get dressed up and everything. So thank you all so much for thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Jim, thanks for including me. Ben, thank you for all that wonderful information about the grant. I think I'm just a little intimidated about the amount of work and if we're going to be able to deal with that bureaucratic paperwork in time, but it's a wonderful opportunity. So so thanks for letting everyone know about that. And Jim, also thank you for your work with Austin Airwaves. And, I've always been, a huge fan of Austin Airwaves, just super impressed with all the work you do. It's really incredible. All the places you've been and gotten people connected. So, cool. I hope you'll present some more about that at the GRC. So the GRC that's the Grassroots Radio Conference. For those of you who don't know, many of you have been there before. And if you haven't, I definitely hope you'll come this year. It'll be in New Orleans, Louisiana, hosted by a team of stations led by WHIV, which is Dr. Mark Allen Derry and Leanna Elliott are the founders of that station. And Dr. Derry is an infectious diseases expert. And the station, one of the main purposes of the station is to let people know about infectious diseases, how not to get infected, and if you do, what you do about it. And so they have a wonderful public service aspect of the station. And they also have a lot of great music happening. They're dealing a lot with LGBTQ plus programming. So really cool station. Check it out. They're also working with WXDR, which is the Dolphin Radio, run by Bob Dunn and his students at Delgado Community Radio. We've got Tulane University, WTUL, an amazing student radio station, has been for years. They've got a lot of wattage, full power, broadcasting right there on campus, very student-run situation. But we've got them gearing up to help us with a student radio summit that will be happening within the conference. So we'll have a whole track for student broadcasters, college and high school broadcasters. And then the conference really covers every aspect of community broadcasting that you can possibly imagine. Wonderful representatives from stations all across the country, including general managers, production, music production folks, engineers, programmers themselves, and then just people who are really interested in radio are welcome. Everyone is welcome, so long as you have a great attitude about community radio and want to support that. Otherwise, we'll run you out with sticks and torches and things. But it's going to be September 26th through 29th in New Orleans, Louisiana, and it's going to be at a beautiful place called Gallier Hall, which was the old city hall. Davine, I know, spent a lot of time in New Orleans. She might be familiar with that building. Very beautiful. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Stephanie, I'm gonna share the website here.
Yeah, please do.
Cool. All right, so here it is. 2024grc.com is their site. Let's see, I'm not sure where it shows the beautiful Gallier Hall because I'd like you all to see it. But this tells a little bit more about it. Let's see. You've got the early bird ended yesterday. So if you didn't get your tickets, you can still send an email if you need a discount or any kind of price break. I think that they want everyone to come that possibly can. So reach out if you just really need some help with that. See what can happen. They've got some hotels lined up, some hotel blocks, a few different options. Look like pretty affordable hotels considering it's right in the French Quarter, New Orleans. All the hotels and the conference itself are going to be right on the trolley line. So that's pretty cool for getting around for people who don't have a vehicle. And I'm not finding the beautiful pictures of Gallier Hall, but Anyway, maybe you can Google that yourself. But it's a really cool old building. I'll stop scrolling around 1 second. No, it's not there. Oh, there it is. See, like,
Oh,
okay,
there it is.
there we go. So Gallier Hall. And it sounds like we're gonna have pretty much the run of the place. There may be one other type of event happening there, but we're gonna have a lot of rooms at this place where we can have screenings and parties and social events, in addition to the panels and workshops that will be there. And the thing I think is really cool about the GRC is that it's a really participatory conference. Most of the attendees also present, or at least a good portion of them do. And so it's really cool that, you know, it's not like you're just going and listening. A lot of times you're actually presenting and sharing your ideas. So, so it's always a lot of fun, always a lot to learn there, always a lot of great people to meet. We got our low power FM is entirely a result of going to a grassroots radio conference, hearing about the LPFM window, thanks to brilliant Jim Ellinger and Austin Airwaves. We were trying to save another station. He said, "Oh, forget about it, it's already gone." But
you'll never get it.
Once the college says they're going to sell the station, they're probably going to do it. And that was pretty much what Jim and the wonderful people at GRC let me know. They dashed my hopes to ever save WRVU in Nashville, but they also said what brilliant timing for it to go off the air, because there's this new LPFM application in the wings, and we organized not only a station in Nashville to pick up where WRVU was, but we also organized a station here in Louisville, which is Art FM WXOX. And then it's been such a wonderful thing to meet with all these new low power stations that have come up in the past 10 years or so. And it's very exciting that there's a whole new batch of them that are coming up that just applied in December, and they're trying to get themselves on the airwaves. They can do it as soon as possible. The group Jim's working with in Lockhart, and Ben's working with them, I believe, now as well. They already got themselves on air, if I'm correct. Is that right,
Right.
Jim?
Next up is Kyle.
Okay. So they're just moving forward down in Texas. The rest of the country, in that one way, needs to catch up with Texas. The rest of the way, Texas needs to catch up with some of the rest of us.
Right. Well, thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Ben. Let's use the last 10 minutes or so for questions, oftentimes the most important thing. We certainly want to thank Stephanie and the vacationing Ursula and the Pacifica staff and their beautiful palatial offices high above in a skyscraper in Ames, Iowa. We long live Pacifica. I certainly hope it survives Plan 2025 if we go that way. I will add just that as a footnote. We have one veteran grant writer, Laura Lee Harris, a gifted and experienced grant writer, and we're trying to rope in Aileen Truax. Her husband's the license holder of KJZX, wonderful little LPFM station here in Austin, Texas, that he rescued from oblivion. But it may be that these new stations are just putting all their effort into getting on the air, don't have a track record, don't have the language of we specifically want to work with the sheriff's department on this specific issue and this thing or that. It may not be possible for all stations to apply. Certainly the webinar will give us an idea about that. Having said that, are there any questions for Sharon, Ben, or myself, or anyone else? Questions, please. Not all at once.
Stephanie, will you be there at GRC and present on Pacifica?
Yes, sir. I believe we will.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've never been to New Orleans, so it's going to be a thrill.
I haven't either, and my dad is from Louisiana, so I've never
Is that
been.
right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's very cool.
We back in Virginia, Lynn Borton with Choose to Be Curious has been very, very successful in audio port.
Right.
So Beversdorf is on there now, I believe, with her
Yes.
show. And so we're just so pleased at the stations that have been picking up these shows.
Are they going to go to the conference?
I don't know. I've been encouraging them. Lynn couldn't make it last time. She really wanted to go, but I think she broke her leg or something. But she's better now, and I'm hoping she'll make it.
Speaking of broken legs, the legendary radio producer Frida Worden of Wings, she too broke her leg and might not make it. We know that our friend Michi, yeah, it's not too serious, but serious enough. Michi will not be making it. And I know Maria Martin, who passed on Since the last conference, I think I happen to be the last person to interview or photographer, will not be joining us. So it's up to the new generation to step forward and keep this stuff going. It's also two big pluses that last year's conference was very successful. We are very beholden to the folks in Charleston. They pulled it off in fine fashion, and it even offered to host another one if nobody else stepped forward. But indeed, New Orleans did, and it's unique. 4 different stations serving sort of 4 different communities, and it's pretty much in the middle of the country. So we're expecting a very good turnout. Hope to have a lot of polite Texas men and women. Any questions in our remaining time? We're not on a strict time thing here.
Anyone have any questions or thoughts that you wanted to bring forth? Anything been on your mind?
Tomorrow, I believe, is a Zoom for prospective speakers at the GRC.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Thank you.
right?
Oh, is
Yes,
that
that's
tomorrow?
correct.
Oh, I'm glad you reminded us of that.
Yeah.
We really need to get butts in seats at this conference. In Charleston, they could have probably accommodated twice the size of the attendees, and it was really something not to be missed. So I'm told that the word has gone out to a large mailing list of including the new LPFMs.
Yep.
And
Has that link been sent out yet for the Zoom meeting?
I haven't gotten it. I haven't gotten it.
for
I believe our
tomorrow's
friend-
meeting,
Go ahead.
for tomorrow's meeting for speakers,
Yeah.
I believe it has. Let
Are
me
you all-
let me switch over and look at my emails here.
Did you all sign up to present ideas?
I did.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Did
I
you
was
get
at
it?
the last,
I got it. Did you get the
Why don't we
invitation?
re-forward that amongst ourselves, please?
Yeah, I just don't, I'm curious who all didn't get it that's not here.
I did hear a thing from Betty that if you had applied very early, maybe before they were up ready for it, you may not have gotten on the list. I don't know that for a fact though.
Okay, so Stephanie and Davine, you're both presenting?
Well, I offered to present, but I haven't heard anything. And I went to the first meeting.
yeah, we were both. at
I
that.
haven't gotten a different link from them for follow-up.
Huh, that's curious. Okay, well, I'll reach out to them and let them know about that. And then I can definitely send to you all, Davine.
Yes,
and
please do.
Stephanie. Does anyone else need it? That's
I'm
actually.
still looking for it in my email. I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, I've
I
got
mean, it
it.
can't hurt to send it again.
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned about any others that might not be on here. So I'll send an email to the organizers also, make sure they at least invited everybody who's on the last one.
Thanks, Sharon.
Sure, no problem. Sorry, I didn't get that. And by the way, I'm just
I just posted
an
it in
advocate for
chat.
the.
Oh, awesome.
see it.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you, Joseph.
But I think that's only for presenters, so just
Yes,
if you're not
that's
planning.
what I understood.
Oops, where did it go? Copy.
Has everybody got their plane tickets and hotel reservations? I've been hearing they go fast and become expensive quickly.
We're driving. The world's most dangerous blonde is going to drive there at 100 plus miles an hour.
Okay, well, I know you're in good hands. That's where she feels safest, probably.
Yep.
I heard that and got my plane ticket.
The world's most dangerous what?
Blonde.
Oh. Nice.
That's good. That's great. She'll be coming again.
Okay.
And if you
well,
all, I was just going to quickly say, Stephanie,
Yeah.
just that, please help us get the word out about this conference. The best thing about this conference is the people who show up there. And to me, it's just really cool to connect with other community and educational radio stations and workers, because we're kind of an odd thing, like in our own worlds. Most other stations are very different from us locally. So it's really great to come together and find that, there's interesting stations like this, like you, like us, community stations all across the country. So
Is there any word on registrations so far?
I haven't heard the update. No. How many they have at the moment. So, but I know a lot of great people coming. I mean, I've sent out just a bunch of text messages. So again, if you guys can send emails, text messages, social media invites, please do that if you're part of any kind of radio groups, especially. But I sent out a bunch of texts, and some of my favorite radio people said that they're going to be there, including you all, of course. But I'm really excited. KMRD from New Mexico is going to be representing. Oh,
We
there's
have 4 or 5 people coming from Asheville.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Fantastic. Yeah.
You had a big posse last time, Sharon. Are you gonna have a
Yeah.
big group this time?
I'm not totally sure how many, but yeah, I mean, the answer is yes, but I don't know how many yet. But we at least 5 or 6 right now, hopefully more.
And Davine, how is that? Is that a drive for you then? Is that a quick?
Yeah, I made my airline reservations 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh, you do fly. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a 12-hour drive.
oh snap. Okay. Yeah. What? That is, yeah, that's probably good. You flew. Awesome.
Yeah, we're trying to decide. We're borderline. We're about 10 to 12 hours. So
Okay. You're about the same. I don't know
time.
why I thought you guys would be easier than us, but
Oh, is that really? That's all it is for you? Just drive straight down?
I honestly haven't looked.
Okay.
I just thought it would not be that far for you.
We're a little
No.
more to the east, I guess.
Yeah.
So it could be the same. Yeah, I'm excited.
I
to
found
see
the email about the speakers, and the link here has already been posted, but I'll just read. It says, the email sent to you because you indicated interest in giving a presentation. This Zoom session on August 2 is from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And they invite you to prepare your ideas. And that's pretty much the email. So 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on August the 2nd.
And who sent that?
Mark Allen Derry.
We did. Okay.
Yeah. And don't forget the Allen like I did. He doesn't like that.
Yeah.
You get a look.
It's not just Mark.
No,
He's an amazing person, as everybody should know.
yeah, really. Jim,
Well,
are you going to
fantastic.
be presenting on Austin Airwaves?
My microphone or my speaker's really quiet. I believe you asked if I was presenting.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. I somehow half muted my mic. I've submitted 2. One, the popular Riot for Radio, aka Is This Story Worth Getting My Ass Beat? Very popular. And the other one is Marketing Tips, which I hope I'll be a part of a panel. I can do a lot of old school stuff, kind of tricks of the trade, how to get publicity without producing more, plastic crap, how to write a press release. I've written hundreds and stuff like that.
Have you heard from them that they're accepting it?
No, I have not heard back either.
Me either.
I suspect they're overwhelmed.
They addressed some of this in the last Zoom that we had. I don't remember if that was a GRC or Radio for People Zoom, but they did talk about that. And Mark Allen had been traveling, and they are a bit overwhelmed, and they know that they had not responded to some of the speakers, and that's why this next session has been scheduled.
Oh, okay. So maybe we'll all be accepted at once.
Yeah, they certainly acknowledged that the proposals, speakers who had proposed had not been contacted.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any we've submitted 2 different ideas, and we haven't gotten any formal response either, but hopefully they'll. Oh, we can't hear you, Jim. We can't hear you, Jim.
Jim, you're muted. You're still muted.
Okay. Well,
What's going on?
well, thank you, Jim. We'll see you in New Orleans.
Okay. Well, this was fun. It's seeing you all here now. It's like, oh yeah, it's in a month we'll all be together. So
Oh my gosh,
that'll be
that's so
great.
cool.
And thank you for coming today. And Ben and Jim, thank you for presenting on such an important topic today. It was such a treat to have you. And Sharon, thank you for sharing about the conference. It was awesome. And we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for hosting, Stephanie. Always a pleasure.
Have a good one.
Okay.